Here is a strange fact about you. The person you think you are right now is not a fixed, objective fact. Instead, it is a story, and you have been rewriting this narrative, mostly without noticing, since you were about 5 years old. Somewhere along the way, someone called you the shy one, or the smart one, or the difficult one. During your formative years, you believed them, not because it was necessarily true, but because it was said with enough authority and frequency to stick. Over time, those external labels hardened into your identity, becoming the foundation for how you view your own potential and limits. Today, we are going to take that story apart, because once you see how it was built, you get to decide what happens next. Most of us walk around with a self-image we never actually chose. It was handed to us by parents, teachers, or past experiences. We accepted delivery of these labels without ever checking the return address or questioning if they were actually accurate to who we are. And here is the cruel part. Once that self-image sets, it does not just sit there quietly. It starts running the show. If you believe you are not a numbers person, you stop trying in math-adjacent situations, which confirms you were right all along. If you believe you are bad at relationships, you brace for rejection and act guarded, which inevitably pushes people away from you. Psychologists call this identity-confirming behavior. You are not just living your life. You are gathering evidence for a verdict already handed down. This is why so much self-improvement advice falls flat. You download the habit tracker and set the goal, but the identity remains. If underneath it all you still believe, I am just not that kind of person, the old identity will quietly sabotage your efforts. Willpower consistently loses to self-image. Motivation is merely a wave, but identity is the shoreline that decides where that wave ends. The exhausting part is that this is not a one-time event. It is a loop that repeats itself every single day. The belief shapes the behavior produces the evidence, and the evidence reinforces the belief, tightening the grip of the story. Eventually, the story feels less like a narrative and more like bedrock, something you would have to be a different person to escape. You carry labels you never agreed to. I am the anxious one, or I am the one who always quits, or I am too old. You mistake the familiarity of that story for the truth of it, but familiar and true are not the same thing at all. Here is the reframe that changes everything. Your self-image was never a discovery. It was a construction, meaning it can be reconstructed. Think about how it formed. As kids, we do not have an internal mirror to judge ourselves, so we borrow one from others. Sociologist Charles Cooley called this the looking glass self back in 1902. We build our identity out of reflections from other people. The problem is that the mirror was never clean. It was warped by other people's moods, their insecurities, and their limited emotional vocabulary. You built a permanent structure, your sense of self, out of temporary, unreliable weather that had nothing to do with your actual potential. Here is the part that should unsettle you in a useful way. Your brain does not actually store who you are as a fixed file. Neuroscience shows that self-concept lives in patterns of neural activity that get reactivated and reconsolidated every time you recall them. Memory researchers have found that every time you retrieve a belief about yourself, it becomes briefly editable before it is filed away again. You are not reading your identity off a stone tablet. You are rewriting it, slightly, every single day, usually by accident. This is not wishful thinking. This is how the machinery of your brain actually works on a biological level. The self is not a noun. It is a verb wearing a disguise. It is not something you have, but something you keep doing. It is a performance so consistent it starts to look like a permanent object, like a spinning fan blade appearing as a solid circle, which means the question was never, who am I, really? The question is, what am I currently rehearsing? And rehearsals can change. So what does it look like when someone changes the story? It rarely looks dramatic. It looks like a shift in your language. Instead of saying, I am someone who is trying to exercise, you say, I am someone who trains. Instead of saying, I am someone who is trying to write, you say, I am a writer. That might sound like a cosmetic difference, but it is not, because behavior follows identity, not the other way around. When your actions are trying to prove a fact about who you are, they stop needing constant motivation to keep going. They just need consistency with the story. This is the mechanism behind what researcher James Clear calls identity-based change. Instead of setting a goal and hoping the identity catches up, you decide on the identity first and let actions serve as evidence. Every rep, every page, and every hard conversation you do not avoid becomes a vote cast for your new self-image. One vote does not decide the election, but you are not looking for a landslide. You are looking for a trend. The evidence for this compounding is everywhere once you look for it. It is the anxious person who becomes calm through small moments. It is the unreliable person who becomes trusted through months of unremarkable follow-through that nobody else even noticed. None of it looked like transformation while it was happening. It looked like Tuesday. It looked like mundane, repetitive effort. That is what real change looks like from the inside. Unglamorous, repetitive, and almost boring to the outside observer. The story only reveals itself as a turning point when you look backward at the progress you have made. The old identity does not get defeated in a single confrontation. It gets outvoted slowly by a new pattern of evidence. So here's what to actually do with this, starting today. First, catch the sentence you tell yourself. For the next week, notice every time you say, "I am," followed by something limiting like, "I am bad with money." You do not have to fight it in the moment. Just notice it. Awareness is the crack the new story gets in through. Second, pick one identity you would rather have. Not a goal, but an identity. I am someone who moves my body. Third, cast one small vote for it today. Not a transformation, just a single piece of evidence that counts. One workout, $1 saved, or one honest sentence in a hard conversation. Small enough that you cannot talk yourself out of it. Do that on repeat, and you are not hoping to change. You are outvoting the old story, one action at a time. Eventually, you notice the new sentence comes out automatically, and you realize it is not aspiration anymore. It is just who you have become. You did not choose the mirror you were first shown as a child, but you get to choose the one you look into now. We believe that when individuals learn to think clearly and live according to enduring principles, they create a more thoughtful world, because changing the world begins by changing the person in the mirror, one small intentional act at a time. If this video gave you a new way to think, subscribe for more wisdom, leave a like, and share your thoughts below. To truly change your life, you must stop asking, "Who am I?" and start asking, "What am I currently rehearsing each day?" We often treat our identity as a fixed, unchangeable object, but neuroscience suggests it is actually a dynamic, ongoing process. Real transformation is rarely a dramatic, sudden event. It is a quiet shift in the specific sentences you use to describe yourself. When you replace a goal-oriented statement with an identity-based one, you change the way your brain processes your daily actions. Instead of saying, "I am trying to exercise," you shift to, "I am an athlete," which changes your underlying motivation entirely. We must move away from purely goal-oriented language and begin to embrace identity-based statements that define our future, rather than our past. This shift might sound like a cosmetic change, but it is profound because your behavior naturally follows your established identity. By deciding on a new identity first, you create a target, and by performing small, consistent actions, you begin to cast votes. Every time you act in alignment with this new vision, you are casting a vote for a new, more empowered self-image. This process is often unglamorous and repetitive, resembling a series of unremarkable Tuesdays rather than a sudden, cinematic breakthrough in your life. Real change is built on consistency, not intensity, and the results only become visible when you look back over time. The old identity does not vanish in a single confrontation. It is slowly outvoted by the new patterns you deliberately create. You can start this process today by catching your limiting "I am" statements before they solidify into your daily unconscious habits. Awareness is the first step. By simply noticing these labels, you create the necessary space to question their validity. Choose a new identity that serves your growth, and then perform one small, deliberate action that serves as evidence for that identity. This action does not need to be monumental, just consistent enough to challenge the narrative you have been telling yourself. By deliberately collecting this evidence, you slowly outvote the old story, proving to your brain that your identity is actually fluid. You may not have chosen the mirror you were first shown as a child, but you have the power to choose the reflection now. As you repeat these small actions, the new story begins to feel more familiar, eventually replacing the old limiting beliefs. This is not about wishing for change. It is about utilizing the machinery of your brain to rewrite your own self-concept. The self is not a noun or a static thing you possess. It is a verb, a performance you keep doing. By changing the performance, you change the identity. effectively becoming the person you have always wanted to be through repetition. Consider the person who wants to save money. Instead of focusing on the goal, they adopt the identity of a careful steward. Every dollar saved becomes a piece of evidence that reinforces this new identity, making the next decision easier to make. This compounding effect is powerful, turning small, boring moments into the foundation of a completely transformed sense of self. You are not looking for a landslide victory in your life. You are looking for a consistent trend in your behavior. The anxious person becomes calm not through one breakthrough, but through 1,000 small moments of choosing to stay present. The unreliable person becomes trusted through months of unremarkable follow-through that eventually earns the respect of others. None of these transformations look like magic while they are happening. They look like the quiet, steady work of daily life. The story only reveals itself as a significant turning point when you look backward at the progress you have made. Do that on repeat, and you are no longer hoping to change. You are actively outvoting the old restrictive story. One boring, unremarkable action at a time, you build a new identity that eventually becomes your automatic way of being. One day, you will notice the new sentence comes out of your mouth naturally, and you realize it is no longer aspiration. It is simply who you have become, a testament to the power of consistent, identity-based habits over the long term. You didn't choose the mirror you were first shown, but you get to choose the one you look into from here. Because changing the world begins by changing the person in the mirror, start today by choosing the story you want to live.